Hey everyone, before we dive in, I wanted to share something exciting. You can now send us a text message directly from your favorite audio platform. Yes. So whether you've got a question, want to give us feedback, or just want to share your thoughts on the show, I'd love to hear from you. Look in the show notes at the very start and you will see the phrase, send us a text. Click that link, send us your message, and that's it. We can't wait to read them. Now, let's jump in with this episode. Welcome back to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Adams, and this is where we dive deep into the world of sports, talking with retired athletes, current athletes, and everyone that helps make the sports world great. A quick reminder, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, please subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch, and tell all of your friends and family. There's no shame in my game. You can find all of the information at 5thquarterpodcast.com. Now, grab your iced tea or your coffee. Get ready to be motivated and inspired because this is where the real stories are told. Today is a very special edition of the Fifth Quarter Podcast. Why, you may be asking? Because we're celebrating National Girls and Women in Sports Day, a day that recognizes the progress, the struggles, and the victories of female athletes throughout history. Whether you're an athlete, a coach, a fan, or someone who believes in the power of sports to shape lives, or just the general public, this episode is for you. Women's sports have come a long way, but it hasn't been an easy road. For much of history, women were shut out of competitive sports with opportunities limited to informal play and physical education. It wasn't until Title IX passed in 1972 that we saw a real shift in the opportunities for female athletes in the U.S. This legislation changed the game, requiring students to offer equal access to sports, paving the way for generations of women to compete at every level. From pioneers like Wilma Rudolph, who overcame a childhood illness to win 3 Olympic gold medals in 1960, to Billie Jean King, who didn't just dominate tennis, but also fought for equal pay and opportunities for women in sports. These trailblazers made it possible for today's athletes to thrive and advocate for the next generation of female athletes. Fast forward to this past year in 2024, where we witnessed history continue to be made. The WNB had its most watched season ever with players like Caitlin Clark and Aja Wilson redefining the sport's popularity. Women's soccer is at an all-time high with record-breaking attendance at the NWSL Championship and an explosion of global talent. Gymnastics, track and field, and even volleyball in Nebraska have historically, and then there's the historically male-dominated sports like baseball and football that are seeing more female athletes make their mark. But today isn't just about celebrating what happens on the field. It's about recognizing the power of sports to shape lives beyond competition. After all, this podcast was built on that very subject, the athlete transitioning into a different career. One of the most fascinating aspects of women in sports is what happens after they leave competition. In the past few years, we've seen an incredible wave of female athletes taking their leadership, their resilience, and competitive edge into entirely new industries. Alex Morgan, after an iconic soccer career, has become a force in sports broadcasting, using her voice to advocate for equal pay and elevate women's sports coverage. Sue Bird, a basketball legend, is now an entrepreneur and a co-founder of a sports media company that amplifies underrepresented voices in athletics. Simone Biles, we all witnessed it, one of the most decorated gymnasts of all times, has shifted into mental health advocacy, using her platform to push for change in athlete well-being. Serena Williams, the GOAT herself as well, a household name in tennis, has built a business empire in fashion, venture capital, and media, proving that dominance on the court translates into success in the boardroom. Beyond the superstars, there are thousands of former female athletes transitioning into coaching, sports administration, entrepreneurship, and leadership roles in industries far beyond sports. The skills developed in competition, discipline, teamwork, resilience, and the ability to perform under pressure are valuable in any field. This is something I love talking about with my guests on the Fifth Quarter podcast. Since the creation of this podcast in July 2023, I've had the privilege of interviewing some incredible women who have shared their stories of resilience, transition, and growth. And also, they talked about their failures and what they learned from them. Every single woman who has stepped onto this podcast has left us with wisdom that extends far beyond sports. So, what's next for women in sports? The fight for equality isn't over. Despite the progress, we still see disparities in media coverage, sponsorship deals, and financial support for female athletes compared to their male counterparts. But the momentum is undeniable. So, what can we do? Support. You can support women's sports by watching, sharing, and talking about them in a positive voice. Visibility matters. Encourage young girls to stay in sports, knowing that the confidence and skills they develop will serve them for a lifetime. Advocate for better opportunities for female athletes at every level, whether that's in the younger programs, high school programs, college scholarships, or professional leagues. Celebrate not just their athleticism, but their leadership beyond sports, because their stories don't end when they retire. They're just getting started. As we recognize National Girls and Women in Sports Day, let's commit to keeping this conversation going every day of the year. Let's make sure the next generation of female athletes has even more opportunities, more respect, and more support. And this includes all the women who work in sports, not just the athletes, like the inspiring Jessica Benson, a sports broadcaster from right here in Memphis. And yes, she's been on the podcast as well. Thank you for joining me for this special episode. I hope today's conversation has inspired you to celebrate the wins, support the movement, and push for the future of women in sports. Until next time, keep pushing, keep growing, keep making impact. Remember, change is our ally and it paves the way for greatness. Stay inspired. Have a great rest of the week. Hey everyone, a quick scheduling update. The Fifth Quarter podcast is moving from a weekly show to an every other week schedule. Thank you so much for your support. I'm excited to keep sharing these amazing journeys with you.